One of our lectures at the contract negotiations with turbine manufacturers is Thilo Langfeldt, who comes from Strategy Engineers. Could you please just describe your background, Thilo?
Yes, sure. My background is in industry and consulting, so I have a background of 15 years. Started off at Siemens Power Generation, and then gone through a couple of consultancies, also Booz Allen Hamilton for 7 years, and I was mainly working with also the energy business, but on the other hand with aerospace and automotive as one of the focus points. And now recently we founded Strategy Engineers in 2010 as a new consulting company with experienced management consultants, also focusing on automotive industry and aerospace, but also doing energy assignments. And that is, I think, a benefit for both of our clients and for us, because we can benefit from our experience from automotive and aerospace, take those best practices from these mature industries and create value in the wind power business, because they have a lot to learn still. Because it's such a young industry, and there are no industry standards regarding processes and best practices.
So when you take this background to the wind industry, and you have one of your presentation is called how to evaluate and compare different turbine manufacturers from a commercial point of view. How do you structure this comparison?
The comparison actually is just one single step in a process that we would always recommend to go through. So actually, comparison is one part of the whole process of procurement wind turbines. In the end, you need to go through negotiations, but to be well prepared for negotiations, you have to understand markets, you have to understand strengths and weaknesses of different turbine suppliers. You also have to set up a well-structured process that is transparent for the suppliers. I mean, the main objective with all the procurement activities is to increase competition, especially in such an immature market like it is today in the wind power industry. The competition is very important because there's no industry standard, there are no standard processes, there are no standard procurement process where you can say, okay, we just follow this process, because you have to create your own optimal way. And it's very easy, or it's easier if you have a good competition. And that the comparison, of course, is the step before you go into negotiations. So you get benchmarks, you have some newcomers within the OEMs that are quite innovative. They set benchmarks in pricing. They come up with new solutions that haven't been there from the established providers, and that you can use in the procurement process and in the negotiation in the end to negotiate also with established suppliers. And that is actually usual practice from automotive industry or from aerospace industry.
Have you, in your projects that you've done, have you taken in any turbine manufacturers from India or from China or Korea?
Yes, we have actually, and that is what I mentioned with newcomers. They are mainly coming from Asian countries, whether it is now India, Korea or China. So far we haven't managed to get the attention from Chinese suppliers because they are so busy with their national markets. But we have Indian and Korean players, especially the Korean newcomers. They are very interesting because they have an extremely high sense for quality, and they have very well designed products from a technology perspective. So it's worth taking those into account, even though in the end, you probably won't take them as a final supplier for your turbines because of either the banks think it's not bankable or for other reasons. But still, it's a good exercise for them because they get to know the processes here in Europe and they want to enter the market. And it's a good lever for your process to increase competition in your procurement process.
For an owner who is who's wanting to buy turbines, what would be the three most important issue to consider when you comparing turbines from a commercial point of view?
Yeah, from a commercial point of view, first you have to be clear about your objectives. One very important objective, independent which strategy the operator is pursuing, is of course cost of energy. And I would always put cost of energy in the top of my criteria. I wouldn't so much take internal rate of return or the usual profitability indicators, also net present value, because there's a huge share of the parameters cannot be impacted by suppliers, like the electricity price, for example. So you shouldn't confront them with these factors. So you should really confront the suppliers with a criteria that they can impact. And this would be, for example, cost of energy. Another one is, especially if we look at operational maintenance, is flexibility. Established players, they are quite protective regarding documentation, regarding data access. So they don't want to share too much of the information because they see it as intellectual property. And that is important. So this is not really a hard factor. You cannot measure that in numbers, but it's very important if you are an operator who is, let's say, the utility type operator who has their own operations in operation and maintenance, or own workforce. So you want to deploy them on operation and maintenance activities. So you need all these data and documents to do that after a while.
How do you manage to get it into the contract then?
Yeah, that's a point. You really have to put that in right from the beginning. When you the best actually is to already put it as a principle in the RFQ, which is the request for quotes, when you ask suppliers to participate in your process. And then you should state also, let's say, the 10 major principles. And one of it is we want to get full access to operational data from start. That makes it clear from start.
Yes. I had in the research for this conference, I had the top of the list was how to compare different service agreements, and I suppose if when you compare turbine manufacturers from a commercial point of view, there is no processes, as you said, etc. But at least you have the FIDIC yellow book. But for the service agreements, there's not even a common framework.
It's true. Yeah, there. Actually, as you said, for the turbine supply agreement, you can take the standards like FIDIC Silver or Yellow Book. But for the service agreement, there is not an industry standard. So you can either develop your own contract package, but then you need to employ also lawyers to do that, and because that is quite an effort. And secondly, the OEMs would be very hesitant to accept this proposal. So one possibility, and this is probably the easiest way and probably also the most efficient way, is just to take the OEM's contract package for service as a basis, but then you need really to go through it and negotiate certain conditions.
Isn't there any case where the utilities has sit down together and they share the lawyer costs and they take out a standard service agreement? Has that happened?
I haven't seen that so far. Maybe it has happened. I know I have service contract proposals that come from developers, and that could be used as kind of standard, which is more balanced in the way that there's less risk on the employer side. So these kind of contracts are available. But as I said, it's always difficult to get that through the discussions with the OEM.
Well, for the service agreements, when there is no framework, it's a little bit risky for the owner, but it's also a opportunity for the turbine manufacturer to freely create a very attractive service agreement if they have a deep understanding for the owner. Couldn't that be one point to come to the conference as well?
That is exactly a point which would be a good motivation for turbine suppliers to join this conference, because they will learn about the demands of, let's say, the utility type customers that have completely different demands than, let's say, the traditional clients that they know from the market. And even though this development, let's say, the change from a seller's to a buyer's market, but also the change in the customer base from the typical, let's say, farmer just buying a few turbines to the institutional clients like large utilities buying a large-scale projects. And this development hasn't really led to a change of behavior with most of the OEMs. So there's a lot of improvement potential in their sales processes and in their service offerings. So it's definitely actually beneficial for them, I think, also to join these conferences.
I mean, we have had so far on this format of this conference, we have had Repower, Vestas, Enercon, Siemens, Winwind, Syslon, Gamesa. What would be the three most interesting things for them at the conference to take part of?
Yeah, first of all, I mean, it's not an easy role for them, because the situation right now in the market is really so that, as I said, there are a few OEMs that really either they don't understand the new requirements from the customers or they ignore them. So, but both ways are not the right way to be successful in the markets, I would say. So, and I think if you proactively address the requirements, even though that you might lose some, let's say, some traditional property rights for documentation or whatever data that you think are important to protect. But in the long term, they will lose them anyway, I would say. They are forced to give them away.
When I first confronted you discussing your possibilities to be a speaker at the conference, you mentioned to me that one of the most important things is to keep the competition alive all the way through the procurement process. Could you please develop that? Yeah,
sure. As I said before, the wind power market is still a very immature market. And immature markets, they don't have established processes. There are no transparent price levels. The profitability structure is not transparent. So that means to get through a successful negotiation, somehow you need to get transparency about the market to know where you can put your finger on and which are the points where you can negotiate not only prices but also commercial conditions. And the best way actually to achieve this transparency is by competition. And competition you can achieve by inviting as many suppliers as possible into your procurement process. And I mean, it starts with that you really market your project as much as possible, so that as many suppliers are interested in your project. And it also includes that you invite the established OEMs, of course, but also the first tier, second tier, and newcomers, so to say, from with promising concepts, but maybe not a huge track record. But they normally come with very innovative solutions, and they show extremely high senior attendance, and price-wise they often set benchmarks. So that is a good way actually to increase competition even in an immature market like it is in wind power.